Hi, I'm Akhil.
And I'm Rohan.
Welcome to The Long Take. This week we're discussing Barbenheimer. Sorry, we're not doing both. That's just what's happening. We're discussing Oppenheimer, the new Christopher Nolan movie, which, as you can tell, it's about the guy in the title. It's like 3 hours long, and it's also like not the movie that sometimes is promised in the trailers, although like depends on what you saw in the trailer. It starts off as like at least for the bulk of it, it's like a thriller about making the bomb, but then it turns into this like sort of political exploration of how destroy people basically. What do you make of it, Ron?
I was the quickest, probably 3 hours in a movie theater.
Wow, huge praise.
It was really good. It was one of those, and Nolan somehow has become one of those people where you're like, you can associate him with some of those most memorable kind of big screen experiences, right, of the last at least 10-15 years. Because I can count on like one hand, maybe two, the best like IMAX experiences, or the best like just theater going experiences I've had, and like three of them are like Nolan movies.
Yeah, like Dunkirk or like Inception. Like I can still remember being in the IMAX theater for those movies.
Correct. And I'm sure like this is going to be one of them, at least for me, like some years down the line I'll be like, oh yeah, I remember Oppenheimer in IMAX was something else.
Yeah, I think like what impressed me was that, like Nolan sort of cultivated, not like intentionally, it's just like a fanboy or a cult around him, right? People like associate like Inception and Interstellar and those kind of movies with him. And for the most part, as I said, this is that movie, right? When they're building towards like making the thing. But then it turns into like a movie, I feel like, which like a lot of like Nolan fanboys might not expect. I love that he's not like kept that for like 10-15 minutes. That is like the movie for like an hour at the end. Like for what just a long stretch of it, it's like this is the movie now.
In fact, even before the end, I would say, like in the end of the final.
Yeah, he lays the foundation for it. Yeah, you're right. He lays the foundation for it because like you're like, why are we shown like like Robert Downey Jr.? He's basically in his own movie in the beginning. He's just in the black and white stuff.
It's happening in parallel. Like we're cutting back and forth quite frequently. Like he establishes the fission fusion timelines immediately when the movie opens. But then you're right. It is kind of a very obvious like I want to do something else. Like even Dunkirk to an extent was very Nolan.
Exactly, which is why what I thought of as well. Like Dunkirk is in a way, like sure, it's an anti-war movie because all war movies are anti-war movies, but then it's still very action heavy.
It's in fact the opposite of this one because it has very little dialogue. It's just sound and images, right?
And it doesn't have like in your face sort of politics. Like it's not like trying to be political. It doesn't show like Churchill or anyone like discussing or anyone on the other side. It's just you're caught up with them, which is what he wants to do. He just caught up with these people on the beach.
Yeah. This one is obviously more in your face with the politics, but going back to what you just said about, Nolan fanboys, I had a very hilarious experience. I don't know what yours was like in the theater. Mine was weird and kind of is an indication of how warped like people's minds have become because they only seem to watch superhero movies these days.
So they start cheering at random stuff.
They cheered when like the movie opened, right? Which is fine because they're excited. But they also cheered when like Einstein showed.
Yeah, I think it's like almost like the filmmaker and audience responded to each other, right? Like, I mean, it's almost like filmmakers, I don't know who did it first, like a chicken and egg thing, I think. But like filmmakers, deliberately, some filmmakers have those sort of introduction shots, right? Especially I can remember, like, I think the movie that does this the worst for me was Aquaman. It deliberately has like heroes pause in slow motion so people can clap.
That's a superhero movie. In this one, it was like almost like a Marvel cameo.
Right, yeah. And like Nolan obviously doesn't care about these things. So he's not going to like, pay lip service to that. Like Einstein is shown like from, I don't know, like 200 yards away the first time.
And then people cheered in my thing.
Exactly. But people still cheered because like it's like almost like a recognition thing. They're like, oh, yeah, big characters coming in.
But their brains have been kind of wired to be like, that's how they respond to an appearance of a character like that.
I think that's how they almost like in a way connect to the movie, right? It's almost like I mean, if you, the last hour or whatever, the political stuff, and it's like just like people shouting dialogue at each other and be like, I'm accusing you of this. And he's like, no, I'm defending on this. It's like, there's no like cheer-worthy moment in those scenes.
But people, in my thing at least, people cheered, which was very like that also.
Even in the political hearing stuff.
Right at the end when Emily Blunt has her Oscar moment.
Yeah. But like that's very obvious, right?
That one, and then when Han Solo kind of has his quips with Robert Downey Jr. Then Solo. Also people.
Oh, okay, the new Han Solo. I completely forgot he played Han Solo.
People were cheering, but even that I understand because it's very. For instance, the final act is very stage play, theatrical kind of situation.
It's like and almost people, like a trials. It's like two trials happening.
Correct. And you would imagine people clapping in those moments if it were a play, you know.
Yeah.
So that's there. But then there's also one moment in the middle when someone, I think his friend Isidore Rabi, that character, or someone else, I'm not sure. Someone's like to Oppenheimer, like, why are you dressing like a military thingy, like in your uniform?
Yeah, that's Rabi, yeah.
So then he kind of Nolan almost looks like a Batman, like
he does. It's a proper like dress up sequence. Like he puts on the hat, he adjusts the hat, he takes his pipe. Like he gives it like at least like 6-7 seconds. That's it.
Yeah, people cheered again. I was like, oh, so this is Nolan's fault, but like everything else, I can't really. It's weird because the world is ending, and I don't think anyone's supposed to.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like the movie is in a way like. Very like almost, I mean, I don't want to use the word dark, but like it's a very simplistic way of saying it, but like that's what it is. Like it's in a way it's almost depressing, right? Because like people are like, everyone's trying to create something which they have no idea what it's gonna even do, in a way.
Every second of this movie, every second of those 3 hours, death is hanging over every decision people make, right?
Yeah, literally like they walk into rooms and they put marbles in a glass jar as if like that's an achievement or something. And I'm like, bro, you're creating something that's gonna like terrorize people for like decades.
Yeah. Which is, again, like we can talk about the central kind of conflict in this movie is like all these people participated in the creation of something so terrible. But then at what point did they or did they not even realize?
I think it's almost like, because I think it's impossible almost to like even relate, because I think you have to be in war to get that feeling, right? It's almost like you're caught up in that, and especially for a lot of them because they were Jewish, it's almost like they want like some sort of like control over like what Hitler is doing to their people, and that's where it comes from, at least for him, right? It's almost like, I want to do it to help my people, and I want to do it before the Nazis can do it, because if they do it, then it's like a war. So that's how he's justifying it in his head. He's like, this is the reason we must do it, which is why the movie, like, and I'm glad they had that scene. When like after the Hitler's defeated and he goes into that room, right, where he's just like walking around his base in Los Alamos, and then just people are just sitting there discussing, we're like, do we still need the bomb? Like the reason was to defeat Hitler, but Hitler got defeated by like conventional methods, so why are we still doing this?
That scene, and obviously the one fairly early on in the movie where he's like, my people are being persecuted, and I'm contributing money to the Spanish cause, etc. All those things kind of let you know that, oh, this person isn't like he isn't working with like blinkers on. Sure, he might be like,
he's not the same as like Heisenberg in Germany.
But then I mean, it's very obvious that politics did influence what he did, but then we never see him confront like the repercussions of what could have happened until it actually happens, and then he snaps, right? And it's not like a gradual snap. He snaps very abruptly. And I was watching this documentary, which is weirdly enough available for free on the Criterion channel, about the Manhattan Project. And a lot of the people in the movie are in the documentary, like a few, I think maybe 20 years later. All of them are basically just talking about the entire kind of experience and stuff like that. And a lot of the plot points in the movie are there in the documentary as well. You know, this happened, this happened, this happened. And even 20 years later, a lot of these people that you see in the movie, there is an element of like shell shock. So they didn't go to war, but it's almost as if they did, right? Even though they were working in those labs, you know, away from everything else, not on the front lines. A lot of them are still like dazed. Okay, oh, we did that and that's what happened because of what we did. Some of them are, you can almost see them like laugh it off almost as like a defense mechanism. But then the follow-up question is like, uske baad kya kiya tumne? He's like, oh no, I didn't touch nuclear energy after that.
Yeah, and which is what I think like was happening to a lot of them. I think the film tries to portray that, is that a lot of them were like, we want to like do this right now because like, you know, everyone hates the Nazis and we have to stop them, like their ultimate evil or whatever. But they couldn't grapple, or they didn't want to even think of what would happen to their invention afterwards, right? Like, it's not going to stay in your hands. You are literally giving a new thing, which is like a giant thing, which is going to alter the face of war forever to like the world's biggest like power. And they thought they could control it, right? Like at the one point when when the two bombs are going and they're being driven away in trucks, they're like, this is it, right? Like we will do this. They are dropped, and after that we control nuclear energy forever. I'm like, no. Once you've let the genie out of the bottle, you can't put it back in.
No, I don't know if that was like naivete or what, or if the movie is trying to suggest that they didn't know. Like, I refuse to believe that.
No, I don't think they know. I think they're trying to. It's almost like what you said, like maybe he didn't have blinkers in the building it, but I think at some level these guys did have blinkers on, of like, you know, like maybe we can do this small thing, just like, you know, stop this war with this like amazing weapon we're creating, but after this we'll find a way to like control it.
Which is very odd, right? Because I don't know how collectively everybody will be like, of course they'll listen to us.
Yeah.
Of course they won't do
they
the
thought like
thing.
That's what I think, which is where like sort of the communist themes come in, right? They almost thought they could change society in a way, and they could push for like idealistic sort of world where like the leaders don't have as much say as they do right now. Like they would have to listen to them, and they would actually not build like, you know, more of these, and other countries would not build. We would not build like a super or an H bomb. But like, no, like once you've given them the technology, they're going to do whatever with it. Like every technology, that's the joke we know now, right? Every technology you build, it always gets first applied in a military sense.
And there's an early, I don't know at what point that scene comes, but I remember it was a very fascinating scene, and I'm forgetting who it was between, maybe like Einstein and him, or...
What were they talking about?
So basically it was like, if you end up creating this thing, what will you do? And the person was like, I will tell the Nazis so that they don't do it.
Yeah.
Which is very strange, right?
No, which is how the scientists think, right? Like in a scientist world, you're always sharing your research. You're like, I came up with this, and then you share and you're like, oh, you came up with this. So in a way you progress faster, right? That's the belief. But when you apply these things in a war scenario, that's not beneficial anymore. It's going to act against your interest, because now scientific research is colliding with like national interest. Now countries are divided in terms of like, oh no, we need this thing. It's better for us if only we have it. Which is where like the whole Soviet thing comes, right? They're like, the US does not even want to inform its allies, which at that point they are your allies. They're not. This the Cold War. No one knows the Cold War is going to happen yet, but they already know in a way that we have to fight communism, and that's a different thing from us. So they're already sort of preceding the Cold War by doing these things. By not sharing a technology, you're almost enabling that to happen.
Yeah, it's almost as if they want a new enemy now that they have the weapons.
It's almost like supremacy, right? They're like, no, we came up with it first, so screw you, we're not going to give it to you.
Which is, again, like conversations like this point to like the whatever naivety of the scientific community, as opposed to like just the pure evil of like people actually make.
I think it's naivety possibly like mixed with fear, because it's almost like, okay, what if like they collectively just sit down and all of them say, you know, we're not going to make it for you. But then what if you lose the war and then Nazis make it first and they use it on you, right? It's almost like they're afraid of that scenario so much is that they convince themselves this is the right thing to do.
Yeah. And which is where like the final act of this movie is so important, right? Because without it, it ends on Oppenheimer basically being like, yay, and then immediately being like, oh, what have I done?
Yeah.
And then you end, right? But to have that final act is where you're like, oh, but you idiots.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're doing, right? Like,
And exactly,
everyone-
like once, and now that you've outlived your usefulness, now that you've given them the bomb, they don't need you anymore, right? They can just like, you go to other people.
not only are they going to silence you, they're going to they have the power
They will
and
destroy you forever.
yeah, they can destroy you forever.
Like
You know,
the
it's
guy who's possibly like the biggest patriot in that moment because he's helping you build the bomb that gets you ahead in the war. You drag him through the mud so much that ultimately you are okay even like calling and saying it in words in front of everyone that he's a Soviet spy. Like, how do you reach that level of like insanity?
Yeah. Even Matt Damon's character, right? He is like the representative of the government over there. And even he turns his back on Oppenheimer, even though they developed like a close personal relationship during the whole project. Which is where this movie becomes a tragedy, right?
Yeah.
And what I found also very cool about that final act is people keep telling him like, why are you doing this? It's not a real trial. Like, why you don't even need to go through with this humiliation, right? But then I was like, oh, but he wants to go through with the humiliation. He feels so much guilt that this is his way of almost punishing himself. Like having that daily reminder of this is what you did, right?
And the fact that he wants to fight to be in the room, right? Because he knows if I can be in the room, maybe I can influence something. Maybe I can make the future slightly better. Because he knows if he's not in the room, then there's one less person like him who's dictating the world's like nuclear future.
I almost thought of it as a lost cause. Like he knows and everyone around him knows that you're not going to win this. It's a kangaroo court. Like they've already decided what they're going to do. So why are you even going through with it, right? And he's not a fool to just, if anything, he knows eventualities, right? And inevitabilities, right? He knows if he does one thing, what can happen and what will happen. So that in a way was more interesting because he's going through with this entire like mockery, knowing that he's not going to come out of it victorious. And for me, it read almost like this penance thing, right? Because it's almost like, punish me types. Humiliate me in front of my wife, humiliate me, say whatever, like say lies about me, this, that. And then you have that, which I almost felt like they're going to take the Sofia Coppola route and not tell us what Einstein and Oppenheimer spoke about.
Yeah,
but they do.
I felt like almost like I would have, slightly preferred that, yeah.
But they do, but then that is also a kind of a...
Yeah, it's a proper like coda to the movie, right? It's almost like, their fear was they wouldn't do it, but like he thinks like they have done it because it's just like letting this happen.
Yeah, it also kind of reaffirms what Oppenheimer knows, obviously, that yeah, you're right, you've changed the world, right? And everything has happened and this is what can happen and probably will happen. If not because of what you've created, but for other reasons. But yeah, you certainly like nudged it forward faster. And that is what the movie ends with, which is a very like sobering kind of moment, right? Like it kind of makes you want to like sit in your seat for like 10 minutes even after the movie's ended.
Yeah, it's probably like Nolan's most depressing and most political film yet. Yeah.
Which also like, I thought it's also his most autobiographical film, because there are like, obviously in the Los Alamos scenes, it's very clearly like, it could be like a parallel for making a movie also. He is the director, like in many ways, Oppenheimer. He does have like his crew, you know. Matt Damon is certainly like a producer figure. He comes in, he's certainly playing him like a old school Hollywood producer. And those elements, I felt like, yeah, over the course of your career, you haven't really been that political, right? Nolan isn't. Maybe The Dark Knight Rises was slightly political.
No, but like Dark Knight Rises is political, is possibly in the wrong sense, I would say.
In the wrong way.
It has messy politics. Like, I don't think it's political then. I think its politicals are accidental because he's making a movie about vigilante justice. And the messages it sends are like just like reaffirming like the US's stance after like war on terror.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, in that way, even Dark Knight is kind of like a post 9/11 thing. But then, for instance, he does have like surveillance in that movie and he realizes that, oh, ye galat baat hai types, you know. And so there are elements, but then Dunkirk was the first time I was like, oh, this is now like a response to what's happening now. It feels like actually that you want to contribute, and now this is like him finding his.
I think it's definitely like it's like the growth of a filmmaker in front of us.
Yeah, not to say that you have to be political to show that you've grown, but just in terms of even filmmaking form, right? This might be one of his most accomplished films, right? Because what he's doing here is crazy. Like, I don't want to watch it immediately, but then you have to kind of appreciate it, no?
Yeah, like which goes back to literally the opening of our episode, is that to have a film which is 3 hours long and then still be able to like keep it like so quick that you don't get bored through it, that in itself is an achievement, right?
Just how he's editing to like theme. It's so punchy. It's so like keeping you on your toes, even when you're not following. Like normally I get annoyed with like exposition, and there's a lot of it here. But then in the internal logic of the movie, if you don't have people explaining what's happening to you, or at least explaining the vibe of अच्छा ठीक है ये scene का objective basic ही है. You don't need to hang on to every word and like understand the physics of it or whatever. But here is the objective of this particular scene, and sometimes even that is necessary, right? And I feel in a movie like this where you're going to talk so much, and it's not Dunkirk where you can just use like slow kind of operatic action to explain.
I think Dunkirk was always like a constant sense of dread, right? Because there was like you had no idea what was going to happen next. Here, like they're building to it. You're not actually in the midst of war. You're sort of outside of it, but also like sort of doing something like, but which is ominous.
Yeah.
Which what he does well with scenes is like when you were talking about there, is that he is able to balance the gravity of the moment, but he's also able to recognize that you can be doing like showing something serious, but you don't have to take yourself seriously. So which is why he has those, like especially Matt Damon's character for me, like there's a lot of humor involved in it, which I appreciate as well.
Yeah, Matt Damon's character is because Matt Damon inherently has that he's a movie star, but also he's like someone you can chat with. It feels, and he's always had that quality.
Yeah, he has full movie star value. Like the moment he appears, I think that was like a clapping moment as well.
Speaking of movie stars,
baad, even when they're intercutting, like with that, when Casey Affleck comes, you're like, okay, Casey Affleck is here now, and then they intercut with that, and then you like, even they play that very very like sort of dark moment because that guy's clearly drilling for information. But they're able to play it by intercutting with Matt Damon in a funny manner.
Yeah. Also, all that is very impressive, and of course, like India, we have fake IMAX, but still, it's better than the normal regular stuff that you watch, which is terrible.
Yeah, just putting it on like a giant screen. Like every time you give me like a 150-foot screen, and just like I can watch things on it, I'm like happy.
Yeah, in a way, almost I was more impressed with like the sound of it, right? This time, more than even the visuals, which were all.
I think what was most impressive for me, which we can get to in a moment, but like was the fact that once like the story is so good, I mean the screenplay is so good, like you almost like I think you forget what screen size you're watching. It almost doesn't matter. I think you can watch like Oppenheimer on a laptop and you will still be like as impressed possibly. But then again, you're not going to have that feeling of people literally jumping, like recoiling at the sound of the blast, right? Which is what happened. Like people jumped. Everything shook, which was like those memes before, like Barbenheimer memes jo ho rahe the like 1-2 hafte pehle. Yeah. Which is, I mean, like it happened for real. This is very impressive. But then, there's also like black and white stuff, which he has never done and which apparently they invented the film stock for. Yeah, I think for Nolan at this point, IMAX will possibly do anything.
Even though nobody's going to, a fraction of the audience is actually going to watch it in that intended format, but still. It looks very it looks very pretty, the black and white stuff. Like you can tell that, this is something special.
Yeah, I think and the good thing with like Nolan's film is because he keeps shooting on film, and because he's now like most of his movies are good, is that inevitably when they release for their like 30th, 50th anniversary, and hopefully like IMAX screens and then better IMAX screens will be around, then you can appreciate them even more, right? Those movies.
Yeah.
Because they can be scaled to like 8K or whatever resolution we have then.
Yeah, hopefully, I mean, we won't have we'll have like a real IMAX by then, so that we don't have to like watch like a digital transfer again.
But I doubt it.
But yeah,
going back to what was I teased there was like the most impressive thing for me actually was the fact that he has convinced like leading stars, like you mentioned Han Solo, but he's convinced like leading stars, like not like 1 or 2 of them, but like probably like 6 or 10 of them to play like tiny roles here and there.
Yeah.
That's insane for me.
Only, I think, a handful of people, probably like Tarantino, Scorsese, who else?
But even then, like they do like, like 1 or 2, like someone like a Brad Pitt shows up in a corner somewhere, like in Deadpool or like somewhere, or like maybe someone else does it. But like to do like these kind of like this number of like them, like it's insane. You already mentioned one of them, Alden, right? But then Emily Blunt, essentially, I would say like has a very minor role, and she's billed second.
She is
on the
billed
poster.
second.
And she's like has, I don't know what, 5 minutes, 4 minutes?
I might be wrong, but like there are 3 best actor winners who have 1 scene cameos.
Yeah, I can believe it. Rami Malek has 1 talking scene.
Rami Malek has 1.
Before that, he appears in 2 scenes and he does not talk. And I'm like, what are you doing to Rami Malek? How did he say yes to this role? He said yes to the role because he got to sit on 1 bench and he's like, I'm going to talk now.
Yeah. Gary Oldman has 1 scene.
Yeah, literally appears in 1 room. That's it. Another guy who was only appears in 1 room, I forgot. But yeah, it's insane. Like, I mean, this Florence Pugh obviously has like probably another like 3-4 minutes, and she's like high build in this.
And
like, this is
Casey Affleck,
convinced,
as you mentioned.
Yeah, Casey Affleck. Yeah, that was the other guy who appears in 1 room.
3rd best actor winner. These are not nominees. These are best actor
Exactly.
winners.
They're like leading actors. These are people you can put an entire movie on. Like Dan DeHaan. He led, okay, fine, the movie is Kachara, Valerian, but he led a movie. And here he's just like, he's in the corner somewhere.
Who else? There was one really hilarious one. I don't know if he spoke or not, but James Urbaniak is in like 1 scene with like Einstein or something. Side mein.
Yeah.
Like it's Benny Safdie is in it.
Benny Safdie is in the movie, and he's become like, I mean, if not like a sole leading star, he's become a joint leading star in some indie movies at least.
Yeah. And he's like fully like hamming it up also.
But yeah, they have like blockbuster movie leading stars who play like 2-minute roles here and there. Or like they're playing a bit part role in the corner.
Also, and I was very happy about this, Josh Hartnett is back.
Yeah.
Which is great for people who remember the early 2000s, where he was maybe one of the biggest stars in the world.
Yeah, see, it's insane. Like, I think Nolan is like, forget like Tarantino. I'm saying Nolan is the only person who can do this. Like, now that I've seen this, I'm like, what has he pulled? What has he gone to people and said that they're like, yeah, I want to work with you so much. I accept this role with 3 lines.
Universal wanted to work with him so much. They gave him like some insane deal, right?
Was he not getting already 20% of the first dollar before?
He was, but I think he got like a better deal here.
Okay.
And his upfront salary is insane, like 30-ish or something. Which is more than...
Which is 1/3 of the movie's budget, basically.
Yeah, which is more than Tom Cruise, by the way. And then obviously there's those deals where you can't have movies 3 months before or 3 months after. There's a 300-day like theatrical thing. You can't have streaming, this, that, whatever.
It's insane.
So yeah. So not only is he like getting what he wants on camera, he's also like, obviously people are inventing film stock for him, you know. Theaters are re-equipping just to screen his movies. If this doesn't happen, you know, it's literally the only person who can get away with this.
Yeah, there was so much excitement for this movie, even though like Warner's not distributing this one. Warner released like his old movies. Like imagine a rival studio is re-releasing movies like they don't even care about. They're like, yeah, we'll do it for you. Although in India it makes sense because Warner distributes Universal stuff. I was wondering if this is happening like around the globe as well. They're releasing like Dark Knight and Dark Knight's Inception. Interstellar. Everything came for like a few days.
Yeah.
Like that's how you build hype for a director.
It's a real movie event. I haven't seen Barbie yet, but then I'll do that tomorrow.
I saw Barbie. But yeah, this is easily the bigger one, I would say. In terms of, I mean, I don't know, like, yeah, actually Barbie, I think, earning more like globally. So maybe I'm wrong, but now that I've seen both movies, I feel like this will be remembered for longer.
Yeah. I mean, you can tell sometimes, a handful of times, when you're watching something that, oh yeah, this is a special one. And that happened here with this one. So I'm very glad.
Where would you, I mean, is it too early to ask this? Should I let you rewatch it once before I ask you where to put it in his career?
Definitely better than Interstellar.
I mean, that's easy. That's like, you're telling me it's better than his like worst 3 movies. I'm saying like, if I have to put it between like somewhere, Inception, Dark Knight, and like, what was the magic one? I forgot the name.
Prestige.
Like around those. Is it there? Is it lower than those?
I mean, yeah, it might be too early, but it is.
Yeah, as well. Yeah, I gave that caveat. You can escape the question if you want.
It is. I would put it higher than Prestige. I've seen Prestige a few times, and I think it's better. It's a more accomplished movie than Prestige.
Right.
And I.
Which you would hope for a filmmaker in 17 years, he wouldn't go backward.
Yeah, it's definitely better than like Insomnia and those early ones, and obviously like.
Yeah, which is I didn't even like put that in the out there. Yeah, that's why I gave you the best.
Tenet is his worst movie. I'm not even.
I mean, exactly. Not even bringing it up. I was trying to avoid it, but now it's here.
Which is strange, right?
On that note, go listen to
worst movie, but it's also like it came in 2020, so it's not like a rookie film.
Yeah.
Banaya.
It was like Nolan's like extremeness, like when Nolan becomes too Nolan-y.
Yeah, but yeah,
he's pulled back here. He's done a genre he hasn't done before, like a biopic. So yeah,
one of his better ones for sure.
Okay, then. Does that do it?
I think so. Yeah.
That's all for this episode of The Long Take. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Threads on The Long Take Pod. You can write to us at thelongtakepod@gmail.com. Please leave us a rating and a review wherever you listen to this episode, and we will see you next week.